AirInsight. Today, our guest is Tom O'Leary, who's CEO at JetZero, which is in the process of building the world's first blended wing body airliner. Thanks for joining us today, Tom.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Let's. I'd like to do this just in a conversation in sort of a back and forth format today. So, let's talk about a couple of factors that impact bringing in an innovative new aircraft to the market. Uh, Two things that are important. One is technology risks, and the other is really the tremendous barriers to entry you have, as you've picked one of the most expensive segments in the world to operate in. So, if we can, let's start with technology risk. You're breaking new ground with aerodynamics, but technology risk isn't associated just with a new aircraft design. It's also in product development, component designs, manufacturing processes, and really right down to MRO and services. How do you plan to handle those risks as you move forward, and how does being a clean sheet startup enable you to do that a little bit better?
Well, one step at a time,
Yep.
always, right? This is the thing is you make your best progress when you just focus on incremental steps forward every day. So any program and any startup in particular, it makes its way on the basis of its ability to execute. That's what this team here is doing an incredible job of. We're already proving our ability to work with a very lean team and limited resources to make incredible progress towards the goal, first of a full-scale demonstrator that will fly in 2027. So that was envisioned as a 4-year program, starting 2 years ago, the first 2 years to design the plane, taking us to a critical design review, which we cleared last week, actually, uh, with NASA and the Air Force, the NASA being seconded to the Air Force for this program, right? And Air Force has uh, put more than $200 million into that particular project, and that CDR was a tremendous success. We hit that milestone on time and under our budget, and that's what execution is all about. So designing an airplane, a full-scale demonstration of a plane to fly now in 2027. So it's already moving towards that particular goal that we had, which is show the world a plane that can fly and prove this dramatic improvement in aerodynamic efficiency, which that's really the name of the game. So it's really just about proving it first with the demonstrator and then later with a production aircraft.
Okay, sounds good. Uh, you've mitigated the risks by taking, I think, an off-the-shelf engine, an older technology engine actually, but allows you to provide some benchmarks and proof of
That's
the
right.
of the environmental efficiency of the design. So that gives you a leg up. Uh,
It's across the board really with supply chain, right? It's this is a highly regulated space as opposed to what a lot of startups go into with software or even in hardware, in things like automotive. Uh, these are these represent I guess a different set of challenges, right? That was your first question was kind of referencing the barriers of entry. I think the mentality here at JetZero is really how do you do that is first thing you do is you think differently. You don't look at things as obstacles, you look at them as enablers. A lot of people would look at certification and say, wow, that's a tremendous obstacle to success for your operation. We look at it, we flip that, turn that on its head and say certification is actually the enabler of our success because we're an airplane that will be certified under Part 25, which means we have certainty of an existing means of compliance, right? And we've been working with the FAA now for years from familiarization standpoint and have gotten their confirmation that this is exactly what our plane represents, right? We can use an existing means of compliance And so that provides us certainty, and then that enables our path forward. We don't have to guess what bar that we need to clear to reach the market. It's Part 25, equivalent level of safety, and all the regs are written for us and are a reference for everything that we're doing. So we can go to the supply base and pull as much as many components that have already been deployed and certified on platforms in the market today. So that to us is an incredible advantage.
So by taking that advantage of the certainty in the FAA certification process, using proven technologies in a number of areas, despite the radically new design of the airplane, you can mitigate some of the risk.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's actually not radical. It's just different from the traditional configuration. I don't feel it's radical simply because not to correct. Look, it just looks more like nature intended flying things to be, right? And you couldn't do that at the beginning of the jet age because there was the pressurization challenge, but we've long since developed composites that enable us to create this kind of a shape. And now our goal is to manufacture that shape at a higher rate than other composite programs have been able to do. But we think the technology is matured, and we're proving that. I think it's the enablement, like partnering with Northrop Grumman and their subsidiary Scale Composites, because they are the world's authority in how do you build an all composite prototype aircraft, anything from a one passenger plane to the largest plane ever built and flown. So that's another way that we burn down those risks. We say, what's the riskiest thing? Building a full-scale composite airframe structure with a new shape. How do we accomplish that? We go to the world's leading company to do that, which is the combination really of Scale Composites on the prototyping standpoint and their parent Northrop Grumman, who of course has been flying all-wing aircrafts for decades now, right? And a lot of people actually say that about our company. When Scott Kirby was just interviewed last week by the Wall Street Journal, he said, you know, basically, this is really cool. It's basically like a B-2, right? And so people understand that that's an all-wing lift across the entire wingspan plane. This is an all-wing plane as well. And so it helps people kind of understand that it's not so radical because all wings have been around now since really the late 80s.
Okay, that you've got risk mitigation through using some of the proven players in the industry and proven technology. How do you solve the financial hurdle of getting enough money to make this happen? Because it's not cheap building airplanes, and it's not cheap building a new factory to build those airplanes in. We understand you guys are close to announcement of a factory decision, and any preview on that would, of course, be welcome. But uh, there's a lot of expense in going to compete against the existing duopoly. Where does the funding come from?
Sure. Well, that is a part and parcel of our need for execution. Okay, so basically, what we find is that we have the ability to go out and raise money as a startup, which is a little bit of a different scenario. Typically, in a big company, you're finding authority to proceed, and then the company is going to back the program from start to finish. We have to go through the incremental stages just like any other startup. And what does that mean? Um, we've raised over $300 million into the program so far, and that's a great start, but it's not really aerospace terms. So what gets us through those incremental stages, usually each round is bigger than the next round, provided that you're executing, right? And so that's where we are in a startup. It's simply, what kind of situation are you comfortable with when you're building an aircraft or when you're building a mission? Are you comfortable being told, hey, this is your business plan and you're backed all the way to conclusion? Or are you comfortable with, hey, we've got the first part, and now it's your execution, which is going to buy your way into the next part. And so this is a team of people who are focused more on the mission aspect of that than on the certainty aspect of that, and are comfortable with the idea that their execution is going to buy each successive phase of the program. So what it really comes down to, I think it's a very common question. People say, do you have all the money that you need to get to entry into service? And our answer is, of course not. But the the difference is, do we have the people who have both the experience and the mentality to say, I'm comfortable having our future success and the gates that we have to pass through be dependent upon my execution because I'm confident that I'm going to do my part to ensure that JetZero executes. That's an exciting thing, and we've done that, right? I just, from the beginning, CDR just happened. We moved through all of those gates successfully, and are really happy to be working with the Air Force and NASA because those gates started at, once a quarter we're meeting. Then as we worked further along, it became once every 6 weeks, where we're doing an interim design review instead of a quarterly design review. And that's the kind of engagement, and the kind of rhythm that we get into that allows us to deliver what we said we were going to deliver, and keep our promise to deliver a CDR in May of 2025. So happy to report that we're off to a great start there. And so we have to
That's
continue to execute that way.
that's great. When I visited your facility a few weeks ago, I was impressed with the attitude of the team members. It was, not it's like the little engine that could. It's I think I can, I think I can. No, these guys were saying, I know I can, I know I can. And I think part of that is because they've looked at the concrete steps that they need to accomplish one after the other, and are really not looking at the task as a whole, but looking at what's next. What do we need to do, and how do we accomplish that to get to the next step in the next phase and the next phase? And the confidence level was very high at the organization. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think it's a realization that we're not simply building a plane, we're building a company, and that company needs its own culture. Think of that like, that's our operating system. It's what makes us tick. How do we work together? That to me is a phenomenal opportunity where you get people who all of a sudden they start working closer and closer together. I don't know if you've ever heard, I've been working in startups since the 90s. You might have heard this idea of startups. A lot of people will say, oh, well, when you get to 150 people, that's when it breaks down and it becomes corporate. Like you can keep a nice, tight corporate culture. I don't, and the team here simply doesn't believe in that sort of that sort of momentum towards a negative outcome of becoming corporate. We believe in establishing a company culture that is all about execution, that is all about innovation being worth it, who doesn't look at this as a job. They look at it as a mission. And so when they get to challenges, they don't say, "Oh, I have to." They say, "I get to. I get to do this. This is the thing where I get to contribute this particular part to our success." That's so critical. Having been at a lot of startups before, I can tell you I've seen experiences at Beta Technologies or Tesla, other companies I've worked at, where if this thing or another thing didn't happen, it wouldn't have worked out. And it's not just the one thing. It's not the one person's contribution. It's how many of those are needed, right? And so what does that require? It requires a culture where everybody recognizes that, and they're ready to pitch in. So, execution is everything. That's you have to build a culture that is is ready to perform at that level.
I think you've done an interesting job in creating the culture. Let's talk a little bit about the airplane that you're creating and the Z4 and how you've positioned that in the marketplace. To me, it looks like you're finally building the middle of the market airplane that nobody else wanted to build.
Yeah, this is you know, people ask often, what were you thinking back in 2020 when you and Mark decided to start a company that would launch a blended wing body jetliner based on an all-wing design when really only Airbus and Boeing are selling in the market? Like there's two of you and there's two companies globally. What were you thinking? This was really what we were thinking, is that Mark and other colleagues had, going back through McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and his design firm called Design Technologies, had worked for decades, and NASA had spent over $1 billion proving the three technologies that were most important: flight controls, aero, and composite structures. So over $1 billion in research. That was unlock number one, proven technology. Unlock number two was the ability to de-risk by building partnerships with the likes of Northrop and Scaled, but also the likes of folks like RTX, and others throughout the supply chain. But obviously, we made an announcement recently that we're working with RTX on multiple fronts. Now, these things uh, represent kind of the second big unlock. The third being the team that we've been able to bring in, a lot of them through an advisory board that's run companies like Airbus and Boeing and Learjet and Gulfstream. Like, these are amazing, amazing folks. The team is kind of that unlock number three. And then we looked at the marketplace and we said, this is the biggest unlock of them all, what you mentioned, the middle of the market gap. So there's no plane that's three-class passengers effectively serving between 200 and 250 passengers in the market. The best-selling single aisle is bumping up against that gap. The best-selling wide body is bumping up against that gap. I guess from your perspective, it'd be the other end. But this is the thing that when I was looking at this even before 2020, uh, I had been working with Mark on a different project in a plane that he designed, and was looking at this all-wing aircraft in his portfolio and saying, "Why haven't you done this?" And his answer was, "Well, I'm the engineering side. I need somebody on the business side." And so I urged him to do it. At the end of the day, I came back to him and said, "What about this mid-market gap?" It would seem to me that if all the sales are happening on either side of this gap, it shows a clear market demand in the middle. And if you can deliver better performance in that middle of the market along any number, whether it be fuel burn, whether it be emissions, whether it be noise, whether it be passenger comfort, whether it be range, if you can deliver better on all of those fronts, then that feels like something where it doesn't really matter who the competition is. The customer is the one who needs to be served here. And that was really what gave us belief to start JetZero. I think also it's just a matter of the question comes to us about, okay, well, where's the sit vis-a-vis competition in the marketplace, and others that are there. We're not competing with them because they don't have planes there. Um, that's just it. There's so much opportunity for growth. They themselves say we're going to see a doubling again, just like we did between the beginning of this century and now. Between now and mid-century, we're going to see another doubling. So that's a lot of planes to build, and JetZero aims to build a portion out of that growth that really fits this mid-market thesis that is so difficult right now to serve for the airlines.
Yeah, you've certainly had a good reaction from airlines. United is saying good things, Alaska, and other folks that you've spoken to. What do you think your potential is in terms of the market for the Z4? How many aircraft would you feel would be to make this program a success?
Well, it's interesting, I think people widely presume that the mid-market is a 4 to 5,000 aircraft potential in the next 20, 25 years. And, we think that's conservative, right? Because, you get into some gray area of like, where does the mid-market begin and where does it end? I think it's splitting hairs. I think the answer for any startup is when you're building hardware, the answer for any startup is how do you design a product that is so in demand that meets what startup investors talk about as product market fit. Like how good is your product market fit and how big is your total addressable market? And then you can kind of triangulate and say, okay, what's the potential for this company? There's a simpler way to look at that. The more you can dial it into first principles, the better. If you can narrow your business problem to not how many of these can I sell, but simply how many can I build? If that's the limiting factor, then that makes for a really good trajectory of a startup that's building hardware. And I've seen that at companies. That was part of the go-to-market. My work at Tesla was mainly around go-to-market things, and that was effectively the go-to-market strategy behind the strategy for Tesla, which is we just need to make a car that has such a high demand profile that the only thing we need to worry about is how many of these can we build and how fast. And I believe that where we are with JetZero and how much interest we've seen from airlines so far, and you're seeing it with some of the public announcements we made, but in the background, there's 20 airlines that are in very, deep understanding and communication with JetZero and what we're doing. So it puts us in a position to understand that yes, we can narrow our business problem to how many of these can I build. That goes into yes, we have projections; those are well known. Um, for us, once again, it just comes down to
Execution.
execution. Yeah, yeah. You'll hear that word from me over and over.
Yep. Sounds good. Uh, the rumor mill says you're close for the new facility announcement. Anything you can give us as an update, or can we expect something before Paris, after Paris?
I would say that the rumor mill is correct. We are close. We expect to announce something this month.
Okay, that's great. So it could be either before or after Paris. Sounds like you're not in control of the timing,
Yeah, that's part of how these processes work.
unfortunately. The cabin of the Z4 is quite different than anything I think any of us have experienced as a passenger. Anything you'd like to share about the experience of what's coming in terms of
Well, I mean,
passenger layouts and
this is a personal unlock for me, and I think for everyone, because there's a lot of people who are in this business and in this industry forget about the fact that at the end of the day, we're all passengers anyway, right?
right?
And unless you can afford to fly private, and I can't, and almost everybody I know is unable to, um, then we're passengers and we fly a lot. I know a lot of people. I thought I was big star when I hit 1 million miles, and I was talking to people at our partner Siemens, and they're saying, "Oh no, I have 4 million miles. Oh, I have 3 million miles." And just imagine how much of our time is spent in airplanes. And
So
so,
as somebody with 3 million, I know well,
you know you
unfortunately.
you know exactly how well. So, as a passenger, would you appreciate a wider seat?
Yes, absolutely.
Wider seats are less of a premium on a blended wing body plane because I don't need to grow the entire tube to deliver that width. You're only, growing effectively the top and the bottom. So there's less overall structural demand. That's just square cube law. It's actually not first principles physics. It's just geometry.
Yep.
And so less of a premium to get wider seats, but really what we look at, our cabin design team has incredible experience. They've designed planes plane interiors products. We think of it as the airlines buy seats in a cabin on a plane, right? Like that's what they're doing because that's what they sell. They sell seats in a cabin on a plane. So when we think about the product, it's not to leave this out. Our folks had designed A220, Embraer, E145, A350, um, and really looked at this particular shape and said, how is this shape going to enable us to improve everything, to make everything better? So, of course, you might look for a little bit more seat comfort, but it's really everything that goes around that, right? Because the anxiety of the travel experience presently starts before you get on the plane and when you're coming through TSA, but that's not really controllable for the airlines. What is controllable is the next piece of anxiety when it's, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin boarding through gate 22A and everybody rushes the gate and everybody feels anxious and you never hated somebody more as a human being than when you're like jostling for who's going to get the bag space in the overhead. So looking to utilize this new shape to solve all those problems, really provide a meaningful solution. When folks see that, as you did, um, it really opens your eyes and your imagination to what the future world of air travel could be. And it's a pretty exciting look at it.
Now, there are certainly lots of possibilities given the configuration that you have for the airplane and the multiple mini cabins, I'd call them, that you can use to differentiate service points. And it's an exciting future in looking at that.
Yeah, that's right. I've never, thanks for the, you just helped us with our marketing there, mini cabins. It is the thing, right? Because it's a wider plane, so it's a four aisle as opposed to a single or a twin aisle. But it's four in the back and two in the front. So what does that give you? The potential for six discrete mini cabins. I like this. Thanks.
Yep. I think that uh, with that we'll close for now and hopefully invite you back for a progress report in the near future and
Absolutely.
join us on a future podcast. Thanks very much for being with us, Tom.
Would love to. And you're welcome and happy to do it again.